Okay, so we are recording, but we'll give it a couple more minutes before we dive into the show. And we'll go to view, to full slide. Just make sure everyone is muted. Cool. All right, Bryce, let's dive straight into it. I think most people are going to be here, and people can tag along, or the late showers can just dial in as needed. We're going to go into the slideshow presentation. So, Bryce, before we dive into it, mate, do you want to give us a little bit of introduction on yourself for those people who, we should be pressing pause, for those people who might not know who you are?
Yeah, sure. I'm Bryce Robertson from Property Works, all about mobile home parks. A little bit of a background on me, originally from Australia. Did a lot of traveling. I traveled the world for about 6 years, went to about 50 countries. And I realized when I was traveling that I was making some money in between each travel and then having a great vacation and then coming back to like no money. So when I got to the United States 7 years ago, I got together with my wife and we decided that we wanted to create that same kind of lifestyle but make it sustainable. And real estate really has been an excellent platform for us to be able to do that.
Nice. For everyone out there, of you can't tell that we are Australian and we're taking over the United States one by one mobile home park at a time, right, Bryce?
Yeah, there you go.
Mate, so you moved to the country 7 years ago. What attracted you firstly to mobile home park? And I'm sure we're going to get into it in the show, but what was the attraction to you? Was it purely from the cash flow point of view, or is it from in creating a lifestyle for yourself, or was it more to do with establishing long-term wealth?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Definitely, mobile home parks are excellent for cash flow, really good cash flow vehicles, but also a lot of value add in mobile home parks for good for long-term wealth generation as well. But one of the things that really stood out to me is that mobile home park investing is a specific niche. And it's quite a small community of people within the industry, and I just really like how it operates.
Nice. And so we're going to dive into a few topics today on what mobile home park investing is. So let's kick it off, and we'll get into what exactly will we cover today. And so my point of view for everyone on the call is to really, I'm a multifamily investor. I've known Bryce for a couple of years now, and we're good mates, and I wanted to get him on, do a webinar with him because I wanted to establish a commonality between mobile home park investing and multifamily investing. I talk a lot about, if you've joined any of my other webinars, I talk a lot about multifamily investing and the benefits of cash flow and all that good stuff. And really today's underlying theme will be to draw similarities. And so, what we'll be covering, right, Bryce, will be, what is a mobile home park and the differences between that and an apartment building, how Bryce himself is finding deals, how do you choose a market, and how do you go about underwriting and evaluating a deal? Because I guess that's the biggest thing that most people have when they first get into any investing space or any asset class is how do you make sure you've got a good deal here and it's not just a dud? and sort of the top 5 mistakes when getting started and a bit of a deal profile. I will add that this webinar is a introduction, the education portion of a 2-part series. The second part of the series is we're actually doing a bus tour in April, on April 22nd, which is a Saturday. And we'll be traveling up to Bryce's mobile home park in Kern County, about 4 hours north of LA, for those people who are based here in LA. And for all those people who do want to join, either join the meetup group or at the end of the show, we'll talk a little bit more about it. So Bryce, you ready to dive straight into the webinar today?
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
All right, mate. So talk to me about mobile home parks. And, people have this, well, at least when I first moved to the United States, I thought a mobile home park was a trailer park. So is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, well, I suppose a trailer essentially is one of the first forms of what you would now call a mobile home, and that was actually towed behind a vehicle. Right. Modern day mobile homes are a little bit larger, And instead of them being towed directly behind a vehicle, they go on a flatbed trailer and they can be moved around that way. But, what we're really talking about is a home that is mobile, although it's not as mobile as people probably think. They're built in a factory. They are transportable on a flatbed trailer. And they're kind of semi-fixed. Although you can pick them up and move them somewhere else, it costs about $4,000 for a single wide trailer to be moved to another park. And then we have, tie down costs, and it has to be signed off by the local inspector. And so, once someone moves a home to a community, typically they leave it there.
Right. And just by looking at some of the, you've got single wides and double wides, like 18 feet and 20 feet. That's a huge truck. So do they come in segments, or do typically they come on one platform?
Yeah, so single wides go up to 18-foot wide. The older ones can be even as small as 8-foot wide, up to 18-foot wide. And that'll go on the back of one truck. But the double wides, you basically have to split those in half and put them on 2 trucks. And so
for the layman's out here, I know a little bit about it, but I'm going to be quizzing you today as if I don't know anything. But give us the history of mobile home parks, or at least what's the what are they? Because they're not as prevalent, or people don't think of them. They think of maybe trailer park trash or something like that. So how do you describe to someone who's never heard of a mobile home park and get rid of that connotation of like a bad connotation to mobile home parks?
Sure. Well, a mobile home park is really a space of land where a whole bunch of people come and park their homes, and it's like a colony of mobile homes. And you are correct, there is a bad connotation that has been around mobile home parks as being trailer trashy, but that's actually not the case. And if you look at the history of mobile home parks and where they actually started, it starts off with trailers being towed around by very wealthy people that are traveling from point A to point B, and they want to go around with these caravans and trailers and park up somewhere overnight while they're on a long travel. And, you look at some of these old trailers, some of these old caravans, they actually have chandeliers in them. I mean, we're talking about some nice little movable homes. And over time, things changed. And then what once was for more the elite kind of people, we're talking, movie stars and actors and doctors and things like that, then it transformed into more of a affordable type housing. And so now mobile home parks is really a great way for people to live, have their own land, and live in an affordable lifestyle.
Right. So right now, like the modern mobile home, and I don't know if there is such a word as modern, but the mobile home parks of today are for lower income. Is that correct? And because I don't think you'd see movie stars or doctors in a mobile home park today, or at least not the ones that I've seen. Or maybe up in Malibu, the ones on the beaches are for those types of people.
Yeah, well, there's basically 2 types of mobile home parks. There's the affordable living type of mobile home park, which is the asset class that I'm involved in. And then there's another one called preferred lifestyle. And the preferred lifestyle is actually, a 5-star park where someone swears that they want to live there because they like living there, not because they have to live there. And some of those parks we've been talking about is one that just got sold in Laguna Beach, California for, I think it was $89 million.
Whoa.
Where they have $5,000 a month space rent. And that's not including whatever costs you have for your home on top of that. And some of the homes in those areas we're talking about $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 just for the home. So that's a preferred lifestyle kind of mobile home park. But we're in the affordable lifestyle kind of park, and that's anything from 1.5 stars to probably like 3 stars, maybe low 4-star park. And it is an affordable type of living, nice, clean place to live.
Right. And now talk to us about the star rating of that, because I know that, in multifamily, we have different classes. There's class A, which I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, class A would be your preferred lifestyle type of, if we're doing apples to apples, class A, the new luxury type of multifamily. would be the same as a preferred lifestyle mobile home park like a Laguna Beach, where it's $5,000 a month lot rent. And Class B and Class C are going to be more of your affordable renting, multifamily renting. And what sort of star rating does a Class C, say, for example, have in the mobile home park space?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the star rating actually comes in five stars, 1 to 5 stars, 1 being the lowest quality, 5 being the highest quality.
Right.
And to actually give you guys a comparison, going back to the affordable mobile home park, the average lot rents are around about $300 a month. So that's $300 a month as opposed to $5,000 a month with preferred lifestyle.
Right.
A 1-star park it's the bottom of the barrel. We're talking about probably a really unsafe park. It's ugly, has no paved streets. There's probably some gang activity and graffiti, drugs and violence, maybe some burnt out homes, poor or no signage, high delinquencies. And parks like that are typically hard to finance, and they're usually a big turnaround. I mean, you're basically looking at a train wreck if you're looking at a 1-star park.
Right. And I don't want to jump too far ahead because I know there's so many questions that are coming to my mind right now, and I'm sure a lot of the guys on the webinar right now also have a lot of questions about financing. And but I definitely do want to go through more of a methodical walkthrough. And I just wanted this sort of slide was to more give an introduction of what mobile home parks are. So it's a space of land where historically it's been for transient people, and over time it's still grown into a either affordable lifestyle or a preferred lifestyle, like a park in Laguna Beach or right on the water at Malibu. Talk to me about just a little bit about, are they building any new mobile home parks, around the United States? And if so, where are they building and how are they building them? Or if not, why aren't they building anymore?
That's an awesome question. Yeah, there's actually a decline in mobile home park inventory, on average around about 1% a year, because more mobile home parks are being closed down than are being built. And the reason of that is because it's really hard to get the right permitting and zoning in cities, because a city, I suppose they look at it being one of the lowest classes of housing, and they say, well, we don't really want to add that kind of thing to our city. They want to add new nice things, and strip malls and things that people will find attractive. So there's actually a decline in the amount of mobile home parks that are available, because some of the old parks get closed down by cities, or maybe the value of the land is worth more than the value of the park, so it gets turned into something else.
Right. So essentially, over time, there's only a finite amount of parks in the United States, and they may be a thing of the past in the future. Or if you are a mobile home park, are you protected against the city coming in and taking away your zoning and saying, look, we now rezone you as a commercial or multifamily space to get higher density on that lot? Do you know any stories like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, you take care of that up front during due diligence. I mean, once you're at a park and you're operating and everything's cool, there's really no problems there at all. Right. I mean, you would have to have some sort of land that's extremely valuable, or you'd have to be doing something that's quite wrong.
Right.
Have your park closed down.
I could imagine, but I guess what you're saying is that the connotation of mobile home parks in any city is that they are frowned upon, and hence they want to use the land that they may be sitting on for highest and best use. But you needed to identify that early on in the due diligence stage, so you're not going to have the rug pulled out from underneath you, so to speak, right?
Absolutely. Definitely build a relationship with the city and the state and all the local authorities, and make sure that everything's good moving forward.
Nice. All right, mate. So jumping on to this next slide, the difference between mobile home parks and apartments, and that was really the underlying tone of today's webinar, to draw a connection between the two, that when you're thinking about investing in mobile and multifamily, mobile home parks are also a great other asset class that you could consider or put as a tool in your belt to have when you move forward. And the whole purpose of this is to show, this webinar is to show the similarities between the two. So typically, Bryce, I know that, I'll do a rule of thumb when I'm looking at a multifamily building. I'll take the gross rents. Maybe it's a 100-unit property, and I know that maybe that they're all 2 bedrooms, and I know the local rent for that market will be $600 a month. So I do 600 times 100, and I'll get a gross monthly rent times by 12. And then what I typically do is take what I call the 55% rule, and I just expenses of that gross income will be roughly 50%. So you don't want to talk to me about what the rule of thumb is for mobile home parks and why, by looking at this slide, it seems to be lower than multifamily.
Yeah, well, one of the main benefits of having a mobile home park is that typically the setup you want is the tenants owning their own homes. Mm-hmm. And when the tenants own their own homes, then the park is not responsible for any of the repairs to those homes. So the capital expenditures go dramatically down. The repairs expenses go dramatically down. So then, we'd be looking at, typical expenses, operating expenses of 35 to 40% of the gross income, because we don't have to do repairs to those tenant-owned homes. Right.
So your responsibility as an owner is a lot less cumbersome because everyone owns it. Everyone essentially owns everything above the dirt, right?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, and that's the goal. Through the process of buying parks, we do actually take on some of the homes, and they're called park-owned homes, and then we're responsible for those. But we have a program that we turn those homes around to tenants within about 3 years, so that they can own the home after about 3 years.
Right. Interesting. Now, talk to me about, you got an awesome point here that, tenants have a yard and they don't share walls, or they don't, have tenants living above them. So obviously the density of mobile home parks is less than the density of, say, 100 units, correct? And what typically do you find in your tenant base? Why would they rent on a mobile home? Is it purely because of the space aspect that they can rent a mobile home park over an apartment building?
Well, two things. One, you don't have to share any walls with other neighbors. You get your own yard. No one's walking above or below you. So there's that sort of sense of feeling that you have your own space. And then the second thing is the affordability too. The markets that we actually look in, if we look at the comparable 2-bedroom mobile home rents to the comparable 2-bedroom apartment rents, we usually want the apartment rents to be about 1.5 times what the mobile home rents are. So really it's more of a choice of the
Interesting. So what you're saying is that if you have a $600 a month for 2-bedroom, you wanted to divide that by 1.5, and that's going to be roughly the park rent in that area, correct?
Yeah. So you'd want to be down at about $450 or something like that. That's correct.
Interesting. And I love I think this ties back to what you're saying before, that in this, I'm drawing a very, very long bow here, but because is a tenant base, say if you had a Class C building, you're going to have potential low socioeconomic income, household income might be $30,000 a year. Because these people own their own homes in technically the trailers, are you attracting a better type of tenant?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the park's like, and it depends on what the neighboring park's like and the quality of everything. But, we do have some residents that are on social security and government subsidies. They seem to be very good tenants. It doesn't mean that they don't keep their house clean and take care of things. But typically we're looking at blue-collared workers, people that work at your local restaurants, maybe at the gas station and things like that. So that's the kind of tenant base that we have, just good, hardworking Americans.
Yep. Who just want a roof over their head. And to me, it seems like a more of an attractive way or a stepping stone, because they're owning their own, trailer, so they've got more pride of ownership rather than renting in a multifamily. Is that right?
Absolutely. And you just said it right there. Pride of ownership is the best way to describe the difference between a good park and like an ugly park. When the tenants really take on pride of ownership, the thing is they own their home. So they want it to look good. And when you have a whole park full of people that own their own home and a high pride of ownership, then, parks can look pretty good.
Right. And I noticed under here, you got the accelerated depreciation of improvement. So you're using a cost segregation model because of the infrastructure that you're putting in. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people look at a mobile home park and they think, well, it's just land. And well, yeah, it is land, but there's a lot of improvements on the land as well. I mean, we have all of the water lines and sewer lines, and on some parks you'll even have gas lines and electrical system. And then we've got roads and a whole bunch of infrastructure there that can actually get depreciated at a much more rapid pace than normal land.
It goes back to the fact that you're not in the business of owning the land, owning the properties. You're in the business of owning the land, and that in itself will lead you to have more of a cost segregation model for your depreciation, rather than even though multifamily has very much the similar thing. You have more of infrastructure costs that don't depreciate over 27 years. They do typically depreciate. I think you had on there 15 years. Is that right?
When you average everything out, it's about 15 years. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, how you're finding these deals, because I personally don't know how to find. If someone said, Reed, find me a mobile home park, I would have no idea. I'd probably go to you. But walk us through how you're finding your mobile home parks these days. And because of the supply and demand issue, are mobile home parks becoming increasingly harder to find? And, like drawing blood from a stone.
Well, I think that there's lots of good mobile home park deals out there. I do think that there's a lot more of attention on it these days, especially over the last, 12 months to 18 months. I suppose you would say the cat's out of the bag. But there's still a lot of really good deals out there. And, if you're looking online, mobilehomeparkstore.com is probably the foremost place to find mobile home parks. It's specifically for mobile home parks. It's totally set up with all the statistics that you're looking for. And that is a place that has the most mobile home parks that are for sale.
Right.
Then one of the next best options is probably loopnet.com. They have a mobile home park and RV section as well. You have to sift through deals a little bit more there, but there can also be some good deals there. And then obviously brokers play a very big role in the industry. You can get a lot of deals off brokers, but ultimately we're always looking for pocket listings and off-market listings. And that really comes down to building relationships with brokers over time and, doing multiple deals together. And then that opens up and taps into that, sort of untapped market there.
Interesting.
And then looking at, other asset classes of real estate, a lot of searching for deals is, very similar. Cold calling, referrals, driving around to mobile home parks and checking them out, and having a smooth conversation with the manager to try and get through to the owner, and then we can search for owners in default. Auctions is another good way. I haven't personally myself bought from auctions, but I've had a lot of friends who have bought from auctions and they've had great success. You really have to have your due diligence down, and you really have to do as much as you can up front, because once you got it, and it's game on. Mailers are pretty much fading out in the mobile home park space now. They're almost not even worth your time at all. An interesting way to find mobile home parks is actually on Google. If you get on later pages, if you're getting into the 20th, 30th, 40th page, then you can oddly find some mobile home park deals in there. And oddly enough, on Craigslist as well. Some people that are selling a mobile home park, it's an industry full of mums and pops that are selling their mobile home parks, and that's really where all the good deals are. And they may not be up to times on how to best sell a park or advertise it, and so you can get stuck in Google or stuck on a Craigslist ad, and you can find an off-market listing there.
Interesting. And in terms of the brokers, I want to dive a little bit deeper into these, broker relationships. It's all people ask me when you get involved in multifamily investing. It's really, no one is just going to bring you off-market deals if you've never closed on a deal in your life. So is it very similar that you have to have those relationships with brokers? And if so, how are you trying to give them, or in their eyes, show that you have credibility and that you can close on a deal?
Well, it's definitely all about relationships. And, things take a little bit of time. I would say that it probably takes at least 6 months to build a decent relationship with a broker. And really what you would think the most attractive thing to a broker would be a buyer with a huge bank account, a huge net worth, excellent credit, and having done a whole bunch of deals. Now, that is definitely something that brokers look at. What they're really looking at is someone who's on top of things, who's consistent, who's going to be reliable and have high integrity and stay in close communication and constantly be in contact. And they're looking for reliable people to close deals with. And so really building a relationship is really building trust and building reliability and letting them know that you have high integrity.
Right. And talk to me a little bit more about that it seems like from a layman's point of view that there's a lot of mum and pops are owning these homes for many, many years, and they're sort of advertising them on what maybe not the most conventional, ways through, Craigslist and through the paper. But are there actually big brokerage firms out there like Marcus Millichap and CBRE that are doing mobile home park brokerage?
Oh, yeah, it's a huge industry. Absolutely. And, a lot of these brokers are representing the mums and pops, that are looking to sell. The mums and pops have had these mobile home parks for maybe a couple of generations or maybe 30 years, and they come to the brokers. And so there's a lot of brokers in there. Marcus and Millichap probably dominate. CBRE are huge. And then there's a handful of actual mobile home park specific brokerages, mobile home park broker, and a handful of those guys that are really doing well in the industry. So there's definitely a lot of brokers. There is a lot of on-market listings.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good stuff. For one takeaway piece of advice to all the listeners and guys who are on the webinar right now, what's the best piece of advice that you can give when you're trying to find a deal? Is it just about hustling through all these sort of bullet points that you've got here? Or would you say one avenue is better than the other?
Oh, I would say pick a handful and go for it. I mean, looking online, I'll be honest with you, you're going to be sifting through a lot of deals. Right. Miraculously in the mobile home park space, I don't know why, but it seems like half of the listings online are valued at about 200% of their actual worth. But the weird thing is that you can actually call up these people and put in an offer at half price and it can get accepted.
Wow.
So it's kind of a weird and wacky industry that way. So be aware of that, just overlook it, figure out what numbers make sense for you and sort of go for it. But really off-market listings is the best. So however you can do that, whether it's broker relationships, whether it's driving for dollars, or however you can approach that, I would say that would be the best angle.
Nice. And this is sort of a segue into, driving for dollars, and you've got to choose your market. So if you're not living near your market, how do you choose how do you choose a market to make sure that you're investing in a good MSA, a metropolitan statistical area across the United States?
That's a really good question. And I think the approach in mobile home parks is different to multifamily apartments. Typically, most investors with multifamily like to look for their market, and then they like to look for their apartments within their market. But because there's only about 45 to 50,000 mobile home parks in the whole of America, we have to spread our wings and really look in different areas. So usually the park comes first, and then I have to check out that market to see if it can sustain whatever we need to do with that park. So one of the first things we look at is the size of the city. And we're looking for a population of 2,500 or more people population, because if it's less than that, then it gets a little bit hard if you have some vacancies and you need to fill lots. And then we also want to look at the metropolitan area, and we want a population of at least 100,000 people there. Once again, if we have less than that, it becomes really hard to fill lots, and we don't really have enough to sustain all the vacancies that we need to fill. And then the next metric we look at is unemployment. We want to see unemployment under 6%. That's going to put us in a pretty good place. And then vacancies less than 8%. And then the next thing we're looking for is a strong employment market. Now, you'll see some mobile home parks are in rural areas, and they might not seem to have a good market, but it might be a one-horse town. Maybe there's a great example of this, or down in Texas, a lot of the oil field areas, they could be really amazing one day, and then a couple of months later, the whole town's like, ghost town. So we want to have good, strong employment market with at least 10 good employers and maybe a handful of really good employers out of that. Then the next metric is median house pricing. And this really comes down to figuring out if we're in an affordable market or not. We want to see median house pricing greater than 100,000. We'd probably go down to about 80,000 if all the other metrics were really good. But if it's above 100,000, we're looking really good. And that means that, someone that's going to be staying in a mobile home park, for them to buy $100,000 house, when you look at the numbers, it's almost going to be, unimaginable. And that's comes to our next metric, which is the 2-bedroom apartment rents. Like I mentioned before, we want the 2-bedroom apartment rents to be 1.5 times greater than that of a 2-bedroom mobile home rent. And then that creates a gap in affordability. So it's like, if they don't live in the apartments, well, where are they going to live? Well, they're probably going to live in the mobile home park unless they're going to move in with somebody else in an apartment. So those are very important metrics for creating an affordable economy there for mobile home park space, and having a big gap there between an affordable lifestyle and something that's a little bit more expensive.
Interesting. And in general, this is very similar to multifamily. Obviously, your population is where it differs. Unemployment under 6%, that's going to have a pretty strong, if unemployment's under 6%, and I guess you've got to look at what those employers are, that would be an indication of if it's a boom or bust town. And you sort of hit on that with regards to the oil fields in Texas. So definitely recommend, regardless if you're investing in multifamily or mobile home parks, you definitely need multiple stable employers in whatever area. I love the metric on the 100K for a single family residence. But what I'm interested in down here is you've got this Walmart supercenter within 5 miles. Why a Walmart and why not another outlet mall?
Well, you might think that, hey, all the tenants in the mobile home park are probably going to shop at Walmart, and that may be true, but that's not what we're looking at here. Walmart seems to be the foremost authority on due diligence, market due diligence, to find out where to break open new stores, especially super centers. Walmart will open up a store in an area that they think is going to be the best. And then what you'll see is businesses follow Walmart's decision-making because they've gone to so much great depth and detail in figuring out what an emerging market is, what the best market to be in is. And you can build a normal Walmart or you can build a super center. And when they're building a super center, that's like amplification on them saying, hey, this is really a good place. And we see the growth here. We see the potential here enough for us to build a super center here. And if you're within 5 miles of a Walmart supercenter, then you're in a good place, which has good growth, that has good potential.
That's awesome. I think that's a really good little tidbit takeaway. I mean, even I'm writing that down because that you're right. Like, the Starbucks, the Walmarts of the world, the Amazon's fulfillment centers is also another good one that I've also been using on multifamily. They're good indicators to follow those big companies who have, a lot of people at their disposal to, investigate different areas, or as you said, emerging markets. So I think that's a very good little tidbit. The last one you got here, which is kind of interesting, it sounds like you put out a Craigslist or a newspaper response, a fake article to see if there's attraction. And it looks like you want 30 responses a week. I've never heard of that, but I guess to test the market, that's a really good way to make, if you're unsure, like if the population is small and you think, well, is this going to rent, putting an ad out on Craigslist.
Exactly. I mean, you look at all the metrics above, from the size of the city down to the Walmart center, and they all generate around, can we fill vacant homes? If we bring in homes, are we going to sell them to people? Right. And the best way that I've found to actually do that is to run test ads for rentals and for sales as well. And there's 2 places we like to run those. One in Craigslist, and one in the local metropolitan newspaper. And just a really basic ad, nothing crazy at all. We just want to have a price in there. So this is how much it's going to rent for. This is what you get with your rent. Call this number. And we set it up to a number that we can track the calls coming in. And if we get over 30 responses a week, well, that's pretty good. And we know that that's how many calls we're going to get when we run our ads. To be honest, we're going to run better ads, so we'll get even more of a response. But that's a good way to test it.
Interesting. That is a very, very good little takeaway piece of advice. And I'm sure if people who come on the bus tour in April, on April 22nd, we're going up to one of Bryce's parks. I'm sure you can ask him more about what systems he's using for, setting up those phone numbers and recording. So I think that's for another call, Bryce, but it's really, really good stuff, because I want to get through all this information here. And I know we're only limited for time. So let's talk about evaluating a property. And straight off the bat, I can see you're using the cap rate theory or the cap rate formula to value a property. So talk to me about, given where you are, the market criteria that you just told us about, what typically is a market cap rate to plug into your formula to make sure you're not paying 200% more than what the property is actually worth?
Okay, now in this example here, I've used a 12 cap, but in current markets generally across America, I think we're probably looking right now somewhere between an 8 cap and a 10 cap, depending on the quality of the park and depending on what market you're in. It's typically what we're looking at. But for this example, I've actually used a 12 cap.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So I've actually heard someone the other day who's a mobile home park buyer that they're picking, back in 2011, they were picking up 12 cap market parks. And now some of those parks are down around the 8 cap, which seems crazy to me. And I don't know if it's due to the fact that the markets are increasing, market cap rate compression, or there's just more competition for mobile home parks. And I guess it's the former, that the cap rates are just compressing everywhere across the country.
Well, interestingly, one of the big factors on mobile home park cap rates is the financing rates that are available. Typically, if we see a 3-point spread between the cap rate and between the financing interest rate, then we'll get about a 20% cash on cash return. So if we're looking at a 12 cap and we can finance that park for about 9%, then that could be a deal that could work. So we look at the financing where it is right now, and you can see how it can make sense and still be a good deal if you're getting down as low as like an 8 cap.
And so even though you're locking in a high interest rate of 9%, which is huge, and we'll get into financing a little bit, but I just want to quickly run through this example here. So you're using 30% operating expenses. Now that's stabilized, correct? You're not, the first year of ownership, it may be higher to get bad tenants out and attract new tenants. So that first year of lease up and repositioning may not be 30%, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how the investment is approached. Maybe there's some additional capital that's been brought in to take care of all those capital expenses year one. As a general operating, yeah, we're looking at like a stable kind of park, 80% occupancy. Yeah. Interesting.
And here you've got the example, $300 for a 12 cap. Is that a typical metric for a park?
Well, I would say it's a pretty close metric. For the average mobile home park monthly lot rent would be around about $300. Yeah.
And when you're seeing lot rents, less than 300, the better question is, when you in multifamily, like I can go and shop comps pretty easily. I can see that, okay, this other multifamily is charging $600 a month, and this current deal that I'm looking at is only charging $500 a month on a single bedroom, for example. So I know I can raise it, and there's proof in the market. How do you prove that you can increase your lot rent to say $300 if it was say $250 or $200?
Yeah, you would think that there would be some sort of really modern way to do it, but really the only and best way to do it is to find out who all your competitors are, all the other mobile home parks in town, call them up, act as if you're a tenant, and basically find out what the lot rents are, find out what's included, and then you'll find an average of all your answers from those phone calls, and then you'll know what the average market rents are.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And just on this example here, we've figured out 30 lots at $300 times 12 and a point, 70% for operating income, and you have an NOI of $75,000. So the park should be worth about $630,000. And then do you take 75% of that 630 and then make an offer? Is that what this last line item is saying?
No, so the whole first section, apart from the last line on this page, is talking about evaluating the land.
Got it.
And you're evaluating the rental value of the land. And like before, when we were talking about, sometimes we own park-owned homes. Sometimes we take on ownership of some of the homes when we buy a park.
Sorry, yep.
We don't cap the rent on those homes. We actually value those homes, find out what the fair market value is, and then we want to pay no more than 75% of the fair market value for those homes.
And how does that factor into your, obviously you look at the trailing 12 months on a property, and they're going to say there's, out of your 30 lots, there's 10 parks or 10 lots that aren't filled, or they're owned by the park. So in terms of you get your operating income, you get your cap rate, and obviously the T12 will only be 20% occupied. Then do you slap on top of that your 75% rule here? For example, let's just say the property is worth $500,000 because you only have 20 of the spaces occupied. Do you then say, okay, well, the other 10 spaces that are owned by the park, I go 10 times the fair market value multiplied by 75%, and then add it to that $500,000 from the T12?
Well,
I just got really granular there for anyone. Sorry if I lost you, but
that's all right. No, I'm with you. So what we do is we separate the lot rent and the home rent. They're two different calculations.
Got it.
So we're always going to cap the lot rent, even if it's a potential lot rent. We're looking 12 months down the track and we want to see what our projections will be when we fill those lots. We can cap that. That's fine. And that'll give us our value. But when we're talking about the rental portion of the actual home itself, when we're evaluating, we just give 75% of the fair market value of the home. But when we're in operations, it's kind of a funny one. It seems to be like sometimes you can make a lot of money off renting a home, but then sometimes you can end up spending quite a lot on your capital expenditures repairing the home. And because there's so much volatility in there, and we always make money off the homes, but it's really hard to come out with an exact number of.
Sure. That makes sense, and I guess that you answered it. I would do the same thing. Even if I looked at a multifamily, I would assume all of them are occupied, even though I might be buying it at 85% occupied, right? And you base off a value of fair market value. Interesting stuff. Okay, so in terms of your underwriting and market comparables, do you want to walk us through some of the stuff that I need to be made aware of when I'm looking for my due diligence of a property?
Yeah. And recapping on what I just said, we really want to separate our lot rent from our home rent, and we only want to value our park based on the cap of our lot rent.
Right.
Keep the home rent separate and only use that when you're operating. And then one of the big things in underwriting is verifying the income and verifying the rent roll. And I don't think I've ever come across a deal where the numbers that have been originally displayed to me are actually accurate compared to what I actually found out. And so I know how a park's going to operate, what kind of expenses are going to be there, what things that we expect. So basically I'm matching up what should be happening against what they're saying is happening. And then you add in the bank account audits as well, and the whole story unfolds, and you'll get to see if they're telling you the truth or if there's some things missing. Or if maybe something looks like a red flag, like, whoa, the water bill is like 3 times higher than what it should be. I think we've got a water leak problem here.
Right. Interesting. And and let's talk a little bit about when you're looking at a deal, because I know after speaking with you for a little while, I've interviewed a few people on my podcast about mobile home parks, but do you want to be hooked up to the city utilities, like water, power, sewage, or do you want to have your own stuff on site, like a septic tank or something like that?
That's an amazing question. Absolutely, all day long, we want to be hooked up to the city. When you're hooked up to the city, it's the city's responsibility to supply you water. The only thing that the park's responsible for in every case is for the water lines and the sewer lines under the ground in your park up to the city connection. But if you actually own your own private utilities, like a water well or a septic system or a lagoon or a packaging plant, now we're talking about if those systems break down, it could be up to $1 million.
Right. Interesting.
So that's a whole nother level of risk that you'd be taking on, and definitely something you want to calculate when you're underwriting.
And in terms of, does that present an opportunity for you? Because I feel like if everyone's sticking away from hooking up utilities to the city, but if you're a little bit more savvy and you scratch the surface a little bit more, and could you open up yourself to some more mobile home parks if you knew, okay, this mobile home park isn't hooked up to the city, all other investors are running for the hills, but you're like, well, hang on, I actually know how to price this out, and you may be the only bidder on that particular deal.
Yeah, that can totally happen. There's some private utilities that I would take on, and there's some that I wouldn't take on. But it's always worth looking at it a little bit further, because sometimes it might not be hooked up to the city, but after a few phone calls, you'll find out that it actually can be hooked up to the city because the city's running a new line through there in 3 months.
Right.
So it's definitely there's definitely some opportunities in there if you're willing to look out a little bit outside of some of the criteria I'm talking about today.
Right. And talk to us a little bit about a phase one, and just explain to those people on the webinar who may not know what a phase one is, because that's a pretty important environmental study that everyone, including mobile multifamily investors, should be doing on their property.
Yeah. I mean, the phase one environmental is a test that we always do on every park that we buy. And it basically comes down to you either pass the phase one environmental, and if you do, then an engineer is saying, well, it's actually okay, and there's no environmental problems here, and there's no concerns, we don't need to do anything more. But if you don't pass the original phase one, then now you're basically opening up a can of worms. You might have to do some remediation. Maybe it can be resolved and you won't have to go to a phase two. But if you're getting into a phase two and beyond, now we're talking about it could actually be an endless number. You really don't know what's at the other end if you fail a phase one. So typically that's a deal breaking. Do not go past this point.
Right. Yeah. And for all those people out there, I can add some more color because I'm a former engineer. A phase one is literally a desktop study that companies do of historical photos, and historical photos are taken of certain areas and look up different records. And they're just sort of saying, okay, was there ever a gas station on the property? Was there ever a certain dam that could have held hazardous wastes and that could have contaminated the soil? It's very, very, like Bryce said, if you fail a phase one, walk away. There's no point in doing, sorry, I just lost the thing because it's telling me I've got another meeting coming on. But if there's any times that you fail that, please, make sure that you are walking away from that particular deal, because you want to be making sure you're getting the right thing. All right, we're going to quickly run through some last slides here and talk a little bit about management. Do you want to whip through about management, mate, and just how on-site management works versus multifamily?
Yeah, you basically break management up into two pieces. Off-site management. Off-site management is basically, paying all the bills, organizing contractors, anything that's really like a critical or something that takes a little bit of thinking. Off-site management's going to take care of it. And then on-site management, preferably, we like our managers to be living in the park. They've got some skin in the game and they've got a good finger on the pulse of what's happening in there. And they take rent collections. They're going to, basically make sure everything's clean, pick up some trash. Sometimes we like to mix up and have our maintenance people be our manager as well. And they do a sort of combination, and they could even fix some of the homes and sell homes to tenants and take sales calls and things like that. Just sort of the day-to-day on-site stuff that's taken care of on-site management.
And are you paying those on-site managers to be there?
Yeah, and it's not really a full-time job for most people unless we're talking about when you're getting into the 100, 200, 300 space parks. Then we're talking, you can have a full-time person there, but otherwise it's really more of a part-time job, and they have another job. So we give free lot rent, and then a compensation of around about $10 to $15 per lot per month as their compensation. So if there's 30 lots, it could be anything from $300 to $450 a month.
So that's including that's on top of the free lot rent, right?
That's on top of the free lot rent. That's correct.
Interesting. All right, mate. Let's talk about some top mistakes that people make when you get started in mobile home park investing.
Yeah, well, you touched on one of them before, city water and city sewer. I mean, that's really what you want to be taking on. If you are going to be taking on any private utilities as a new investor, you really got to do your due diligence, and you really have to know what the risks are. Some are not as risky as others, but there's some private utilities in there that you can be writing a check for $500,000 to $1 million and could be an absolute deal breaker for you later on down the line. So I hate to see someone get mixed up or anything like that.
Yep.
Another mistake is dirt roads. Dirt roads definitely makes a park a lot harder to finance. So if you have a dirt road, definitely take that into calculation. But don't just write it off as being, it's just a mobile home park, they probably should have dirt roads. Well, it's really hard to finance, and it's going to make it hard to sell on the back end as well.
Interesting. And with dirt roads, are you looking to try and make them paved if you do get a park that has dirt roads on it?
Yeah, typically we'd like to pave it for sure. And there's different methods and different costs of doing it. But yes, I mean, it just makes it much easier to finance and much easier to sell on the back end.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about private utilities.
Yeah, that was basically what I was talking about before. If you're taking on a private utility, you really want to do your due diligence, calculate your risks, and subtract that off the purchase price so that you can at least feel comfortable going into it, and then really know what you're doing there. Because when a private utility shuts down, you are the utility company and you are responsible, and it can be stressful.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
Typically we talked a little bit about before, but what do you like to look? Rule of thumb, how many, when you say too many park-owned homes, is there a rule that you will say, okay, if 30% or 40% of the park owns the homes, I'm out. I don't want to deal with that. Or do you, and what's your litmus test?
About 10%. Yeah.
Oh, wow. 10%. Okay.
Yeah. If there's more than 10%, basically the banks look at that as being a challenge, and it becomes a lot harder to finance.
Mm-hmm.
And park-owned home, if you don't have any park-owned homes, all you're doing is supplying water and sewer to the park and away from the park and keeping the place clean. But when you own the park-owned homes, now you're responsible for all of the repairs and maybe a high turnover, and it becomes 10 times more complicated.
Very
So
interesting.
we are going to have more park-owned homes. Not to say that you can't get it financed or it wouldn't be a good deal. It still can be. You've got to be ready to take that on, because it just took a 1x deal to a 10x in management.
Interesting. Mate, we want to talk a little bit about your deal profile that you do have up in the California, up in Kern County. And for everyone who's listening, we are doing a bus tour. This is, as I said, this is the part one of a 2-part series. This is the educational part of it. It will go up on YouTube, so you can re-listen to it all again. But we are doing a second part, which will be, and Bryce is leading the second part of the a bus tour up to Kern County to see his park. And this is the park we're going to talk about just briefly right here, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a mobile home park in California. It has 38 mobile home spaces, a single family residence, which is a 3-bed, 1-bath, an office building / laundry / storage building, all sort of combined in one. And 80% occupied. We purchased it for a 12 cap. And if those of you are unaware of how cap rates look in California, that's a phenomenal deal for California.
Phenomenal.
So very happy with that one. And the reason I purchased it is for cash flow and forced appreciation.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What did you pick it up for?
Picked it up for 570,000.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was already with a monthly cash flow of $3,000. So if you did nothing to it, you'd still get a nice $3,000 a month cash flow on it.
Yep. That's correct.
Which would roughly be what, 7% of the value, depending. Oh, well, I guess if you paid all cash for it, it'd be unleveraged at around. So if you did the math, 3 times 12 divided by $570. But if you did go leverage, it'd be a little bit higher. But sorry, keep going. I'm stealing your show.
No, that's all good. No, yeah, and this one was leveraged too. So looking 1 year down the path, we raised the cash flow another $500 to $3,500, and raised the value to a little over $600. But really, most of the workings have been happening in the second year, and we're currently going for a refinance right now in 2017. And once we're complete with the refinance, and once we've done a couple more things this year, bringing in a few more homes and filling some lots, we'll be looking at a monthly cash flow of $6,500, which is a little over double the original cash flow, and raising the value up to $948,960.
Wow.
So pretty healthy increase there.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations on that. And this is a projected for this year, right? You're working from $3,500 a month up to six and a half by December.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
That's awesome.
That's a projection.
Cool. Well, that's the whole reason, we've got this happening, is that we want to do an educational bus tour to your park. So, as I mentioned, on Saturday, April 22nd, we are doing, we're going on a tour, and Bryce will be leading the day. And now, Bryce, we'll be leaving from Orange County. And where did you say in Los Angeles, and whereabouts locations for people to just be aware of?
Yeah, so we're going to be leaving from Costa Mesa in Orange County, and we're going to be picking up at Culver City in LA. Nice.
And if anyone is interested, please, reach out to us. The cost is $79 per person. We're not making a profit off this. This is purely just to cover the costs. We do only have 5 seats left. So if you are interested, please email either Bryce at robertson@gmail.com, or myself at info@rsmpropertygroup.com. Both our cell phone numbers are there. We're looking forward to this. It's going to be a cracking little weekend, and we'll be back in town before, a bit after sunset. So, guys, I hope we can see some of you guys there, and I know Bryce is pretty excited, aren't you, mate?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are in for a treat. You're going to get a lot of information. It's going to be a very valuable day.
Awesome. All right, mate. Have I missed anything out? I know we didn't really talk a lot about financing, and I guess that will be something that we'll discuss on the way up. But do you want to quickly just summarize how you're financing your deals in a nutshell?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of seller financing in the industry because it's mums and pops, and because some of these parks can be a little bit harder to finance. So there is a lot of creative and seller financing, but there's also some institutional financing. If you have a smaller park, maybe we're looking at, high 5s, maybe low 6 on the interest rate, 30% down. Then if you're looking at a higher class park, like maybe a 4-star, 5-star park, we can be down in the low 3s. Long ammo, not even that much of a down payment as well. So there's definitely some good financing available for mobile home parks. There's a lot more attention on it from institutions. There's Fannie and Freddie financing these days, and also some of the larger banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, are even looking at mobile home parks too. So definitely a lot of options out there.
Nice. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about it on the trip. Up on the bus. The bus will be leaving early, and it will be sort of an education going up to the park and on the way back. We're all traveling in one little bus, I should say. And I know I'm really looking forward to it, mate. So again, guys, if you are interested, please reach out to Bryce or myself. There is only 5 seats left, I think, when we last checked. So if we do get more people interested, we will do a second tour, maybe in May. So we'll keep you posted on that. Mate, should you anything else that I missed out on today's little presentation?
I think that's a wrap, and we can say to be continued.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much, mate, for taking the time to jump on here and teach us a little bit more about mobile home park investing.
Thanks a lot, Reed. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.